Hey folks, welcome back. Today we're going to look at a role-playing game that I just picked up, although it's been out for a good few years now, and that is the 5th edition of the Legend of the Five Rings role-playing game. This was originally published by Fantasy Flight Games. You can see their logo here on the Game Master screen set. However, as some of you will know, FFG was picked up under the ownership of Asmodee, which is a large kind of gaming conglomerate. And in that process, their RPG division was sold off to another studio, Edge Studios, and along with a number of their other popular games, like the X-Wing Miniatures game being sold off to Atomic Mass Games. So there's been a little bit of a struggle for players and fans of the role-playing systems put out by FFG. Edge Studios has very slowly been putting things back into print. For example, for the Star Wars game, the Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, and Force and Destiny system. And the same with Legend of the Five Rings. They've recently put out a new product called Writ of the Wilds, which took quite some time to come out. And there are some earlier supplements, particularly Path of the Waves and the Shadowlands, which are almost impossible to find at the moment, but hopefully will come back into print at some point. But communication from Edge has not been great. We're not entirely sure when some of the products will be coming back online, and in particular the special dice that you need for L5R, as this game is known, or for the Genesis and the Star Wars systems narrative dice. Those are still unavailable at this point. I, however, was lucky enough to find a store here in the UK that still had some of the L5R dice available, so I got 2 packs of them. I also picked up a copy of the Game Master's kit from eBay, and I picked up a copy of the Courts of Stone supplement, and of course the core rulebook. So we'll start off just by flicking through each of these to get an overall view of the system. One thing to keep in mind is that while it does use the narrative dice system, it's very different in character from the one that's used in Star Wars / Genesis. And I will talk about that in another video because I've been playing in a long Star Wars campaign using that system for well over a year now, and I've had a great time with it. I've got a lot of books for it. So I'll show off that and explain the dice system in another video. But L5R is new to me. In this guise, I played it in the past long ago when it was still called Oriental Adventures for AD&D. I played a little bit of the 1st edition, I played a little bit of the 4th edition, which are beautiful books, which unfortunately I don't have anymore, and now go for a fortune on the secondary market. And I finally decided to jump into the 5th edition, having had such a nice time with the other narrative dice system from FFG. So anyway, we'll take a quick look. I'm again, pretty fresh to the system. I've read a bit about it. I've got the PDFs as well as the physical product, so I've had a little look at them before the books actually arrived. But I'm coming to these largely fresh, so we'll just be kind of flipping through, getting an idea of the basic ways the system works, and as I have some more supplements coming in the post as well, gradually over a few videos, hopefully we'll get a closer look at the system, what's available for it, and how it might work in play. So first off, the core rulebook, nice thick hardcover. It looks very nice. This is one of the newer Edge Studio reprints. You can see here, it's got Edge Studio as well as the original FFG logo. You can go to their website on edgestudio.net for more info about the game there. And on the back, it kind of summarizes the basis of the game. So we're in the land of Rokugan, the Emerald Empire. It's been there for 1,000 years, and under the guidance of the noble Hantei emperors, the great clans of samurai have protected the lands from threats within and without since the time the kami, or the gods, came down from the heavens and established Rokugan as the most favored of kingdoms. But after centuries of prosperity, cracks appear in the empire's foundations. The spirits of the land have become restless and wild. Armies of evil horrors march from the Shadowlands. Members of the great clans have begun to wonder if the time of the Hantei is over and whether the heavens would favor new rulers. As a samurai of the Emerald Empire, your duty lies in service to your lord, your clan, and your emperor. Will you stay true to your duty, no matter what sacrifices it demands of you, or will you hold true to your own code of honor, even to the point of death? In this rulebook, you'll find everything you need to forge your own legend, including rules for creating samurai characters with rich and detailed histories, personalities, strengths, and flaws, an innovative dice mechanic that brings your character's emotional turmoil to life, a game where your reputation, conviction, and loyalty matter far more than the strength of your sword. And this last part in particular, I think, is really important for understanding the nature of this game. Throughout the history of the Legend of the Five Rings property, which at this point probably spans about 25 years or more, there's always been an effort to kind of portray a fantasized version of medieval Japan, mostly with elements of Korean and Chinese myth as well worked into that. And as part of that, the code of Bushido, the ancient code of the warrior, has kind of been embedded into the gaming system. And in this 5th edition, together with these narrative dice, they've made that a really core mechanical part of the game system. So your characters will always be in conflict between their ninjo, their kind of human emotions, and their giri, which is their sense of duty to their lords, their clan, and so forth. The dice will sometimes bring up symbols that represent strife, which are basically moments of conflict between those two aspects of your personality. And when you accumulate too much strife, you can have a kind of breakdown where your mask of composure slips and you break one of these tenets of the sort of veneer of composure and respect that you're supposed to have as part of samurai culture. So bear that in mind. That's a major part of the system, and that role-playing, the life of a warrior living under the Bushido Code, is really the core of what L5R is all about. So without further ado, we'll take a look at the rulebook itself quickly. We've got a gorgeous set of end papers here. The artwork in the PDFs that I've seen so far has been absolutely fantastic. And I think it's going to look even better here in physical form. For the chapters, we can see we've got an intro to the world, along with the great clans and minor clans of Rokugan. We've got the basics of the game system in Chapter 1. We've got character creation system in Chapter 2, details of skills in Chapter 3, techniques in Chapter 4, which includes things like kata, which are weapon skills, kiho, which are kind of basically magic skills used by monks, invocations, which are spells used by the mages, which are called shugenja, magical rituals, some other things like maho, which is dark magic, if you like, where you can kind of draw on the power of the Shadowlands and demons. Then we'll get into equipment, Chapter 5, Chapter 6, scenes and constructs. So this will be more important for the GM, how to construct a play session, if you like. Chapter 7 is about the role of the GM and tips on running the game. Then in Chapter 8, we've got some sample NPCs and glossary as well. So there's a lot to get into in terms of understanding the system. You can see there's quite a bit of dense text here, along with this beautiful evocative artwork. And as soon as we start about talking about the role-playing in the Emerald Empire, we immediately get into the concept of the Code of Bushido. Another aspect of the game is that there will be a lot of terms derived from Japanese, so they give you kind of a guide to pronunciation of a lot of the terms that you'll encounter, which is useful. So the core of the samurai struggle is outlined here. So the one of the choices you make during character creation is to select your ninjo and giri, the opposing kind of forces of the samurai's inner desire and the external demands and obligations placed on them by their lord and by fate, which is what I mentioned earlier. The game is also based around the concept of the 5 rings, which is drawn from the famous work by the legendary samurai duelist Miyamoto Musashi. So he wrote the Book of 5 Rings, and the 5 rings are the 5 elements plus another of void, and these are actually the main character stats that you have on your character sheets. And those then define some derived stats as well that you use during combat, social encounters, and so forth. So then we get some details about samurai and how they function in society. Basics of the world like commerce and currency. Those who do not belong, which will include Barakamin, were kind of untouchables, if you like. They were associated with things like people who produced meat, things that were kind of considered impure or against concepts of Shinto and or Buddhism. And they talk a little bit about the basics of a samurai's life, their training, attitudes towards marriage, retirement, and death. And here we have a nice outline of the Code of Bushido itself, which has these main components of compassion, courage, courtesy, duty and loyalty, honor, righteousness, and sincerity. And I really recommend, casting a close look at the outlines of Bushido within the book and how it's explained, because that will really help you understand how to roleplay your characters in the Legend of the Five Rings. Then we talk a little bit about faith in the Emerald Empire in Rokugan. So they're kind of gods are a real thing. They have mortal intermediaries as well who can intercede. And then we get into the great clans. So your characters can belong to any number of these great clans that are vying for power, beneath the overall supremacy of the Hante Emperor. So you have the Crab Clan. They are kind of the bulwark between the Emerald Empire and the taint of the terrifying Shadowlands on the outsides of Rokugan. You have the Crane, who are kind of the political arm of the throne. So they're very good at manipulating people in court and social encounters. You have the Dragons, who are more enigmatic. They have been training themselves in the mountains, and they have a great deal of skill in more kind of inscrutable magical arts. The Lion Clan, they are the battlers. They love calls to battle and military tactics. There's actually a supplement book for the game, which is all about mass battle mechanics, and the Lion Clan are kind of the centerpiece of that aspect of the game. You have the Phoenix. The Phoenix guard the Empire's soul, it says here. So it's a duty of the Phoenix to keep safe the myriad religious paths of the Empire, defining and arbitrating their differences. And you'll find more details about the Phoenix in another supplement, which is called Celestial Realms, and that talks more about the gods of Rokugan and mysterious otherworldly realms like Tengoku and Jigoku, which are kind of heaven and hell and that sort of stuff. The Scorpions, the Scorpions kind of they keep all clans united in hatred against them, yet divided so that no one clan can challenge the line to whom they owe undying loyalty, the Hante. So they're kind of your underhanded, stabby guys. The Unicorn Clan, or the Clan of the Wind, they spent hundreds of years outside the Empire, returning in a glorious cavalry charge that shook the other clans to their core. So they are fierce in their duty and unwavering in their honor. They're best suited to uncovering foreign manipulation and infiltration. And then you have, finally, the Imperial families. So there's been 39 generations of the Hante. Even within a few such generations, the number of prince and princesses born to the Imperial family would require an entire city of palaces. So basically, when you're creating a character, you can be part of the Imperial families who are sworn directly to the political power of the Emperor and try to ensure that none of the clans themselves get too close to challenging the power of the Imperial family itself. There are also a number of minor clans. These generally appear in the supplements as well. So, for example, I think the Centipede clan, they appear in the Celestial Realm supplement, if I'm not mistaken, because they produce a large number of Shugenja, or wizards, basically. You can also find the Badger clan. I think they're in possibly the Writ of the Wild supplement. So the different minor clans, they perform certain specialized roles, and they tend to be connected with certain major clans. They basically add a lot of variety to the game. They let you create characters with relationships between the different clans, so you're not confined to just a few archetypes that you might find drawn from the major clans. Then we have a lovely stylized map of Rokugan itself. So we have key castles marked out on the lands here. We have sort of you can see the different areas dominated by the different parts of the major clans. So the Phoenix lands up this way. We have the Dragon clan in the mountains, the Great Wall of the North mountains here, the Unicorn clans over here, got the Scorpion lands down to the south, the Crab lands here, sort of forming a barrier against the Shadowlands down here. So it gives you a really nice overview of what's going on. And you can also find the redoubts of some of the minor clans. So, the Mantis clan down here, for example. So it's a really nice, handy map. You can also find PDF copies of several different maps of Rokugan on the Edge Studio website. So as far as playing the game, Now the custom dice are kind of the key here, so we'll bust one of these out so we can look at that in a bit more detail. Hopefully they won't be too difficult to open. Well, close enough. Not the most artful opening, but it'll do. Alright, so in the pack you get 5 of the white skill dice, which are D12s, and 5 of the ring dice, which are D6s, as you can see here. Previous iterations of L5R have all used what was called the roll and keep system. So it was based on D10s, and if you had a given skill, for example, you would roll maybe 3 D10s and keep 2 of them, and usually you would keep the highest, and that would be the results of your skill test, and you'd be fighting against a target number, which would be defined by the strength of the enemy, or how much armor they had, or the difficulty of the task you were trying to accomplish. The roll and keep system remains here, but the dice themselves are different. So the ring dice, which are the black ones, they represent parts of a character's core personality and fundamental aptitudes, and so these are linked to your main attributes, which are your 5 rings. The 12-sided dice are your skill dice, which represent your training in particular areas of expertise. So when you're rolling a skill, you'll roll a number of skill dice according to your ranking in that skill. Then you have custom symbols on the dice themselves. Okay, so you have a standard success, which looks like this swirly thing here. If you roll that, that's good. You have an opportunity, which is this guy here. That is not directly a success, but it lets you have an opportunity symbol behind you. And a lot of skills, for example, fighting skills, magic spells, etc., will let you use opportunity to gain additional effects. Or if you're doing this for like a narrative check or a social check, maybe the opportunity will let you get some more information about what you're trying to do, or whatever you're trying to extract from somebody you're speaking to. Then you have the strife symbols, which are, let's see if I can find an individual one here. Maybe the ring dice would be a better place to find one. I guess they're always paired with something else. So for example, here we have a regular success paired with a strife. So this is where part of the interesting aspects of the roll and keep comes in, because let's say you have your 1 success here from your roll, and you'd like to keep that, but it also comes with a strife. And so there may be occasions where you're close to having too much strife and losing your composure in a situation, particularly in a social situation. That could be a big liability. So you may actually choose not to keep that die and lose the check rather than losing your composure. So there's an interesting kind of tactical choices to be made as far as which dice you keep, even if you have what seems like it should be a successful roll. So the strife itself doesn't affect whether the check success or fails, but it accumulates over time, and if you build up too much, then that will lead to outward displays of your emotion. It will lose your ability to keep the kind of samurai decorum. And finally, which I didn't mention yet so far, we have the explosive success, which is somewhere. There we go. So here we have an explosive success along with a strife. Now, if you get an explosive success, then it means you've had a particularly effective effort on your part. In addition to counting as a success, you can then roll an additional die and decide whether to add the result to the check. So that can occasionally allow you to, basically keep rolling if you get some explosive successes in a row and succeeded at a check that would normally be beyond you. And so rather than having a target number that is something like, 15 or 20, like you would in, say, Legend of the Five Rings 4th edition, your target number is going to be a given number of successes, and you're going to roll, your ring dice and your skill dice, see what you come up with. So we have a couple of opportunities here. We have another opportunity and 1 success plus a strife in this example. So here we would succeed if it was, the target number was 1 success, but we would come away with 3 opportunities and a strife that we'd need to deal with if we wanted to keep that success. But if it was a difficulty 2 check, might not love that roll so much. Whereas here we have an opportunity and a strife, an opportunity and a strife. Then we have a explosive success and strife, explosive success and strife, and a opportunity again. So this is quite an interesting one. Say if we were able to keep 3 dice, pretty much whatever we do, we're going to end up with strife, right? But we might keep 1 opportunity without strife, and then we'll keep this guy, which is an explosive success, and this guy, which is an explosive success, and then we can roll additional die, right? So we can then roll these guys, and we end up with another explosive success. So we've already got 2 successes and an opportunity. No, 3 successes, actually. And I can yet roll another die. And we have 1 more success. So that leaves me with 4 successes on the check. So because of that explosive success that I rolled 2 of, I actually was able to succeed really well at this check and beat potentially a target number of 4, which is pretty dang good. Plus I have an opportunity in the bargain, but I also do have 2 strife added to my total. Depending on what my strife total is, that could put me over composure and lead to some side effects in the narrative. So it's a pretty easy system to understand, and it's not as complex as the Star Wars or Genesis system in that you don't have things like advantages and threat that cancel each other out and stuff. You just have kind of different varieties of success or opportunity, and then they're often combined with strife, which you need to track for your character's ability to stay composed. So then they inform you how to make a check here. So basically, you assemble a dice pool of the 2 different kinds of dice. You try to roll. You select a number of dice equal to the character's ring value to keep out of those dice that you roll, then resolve the positive and negative effects of the symbols on all the kept dice. And of course, you should only make a check when it's basically possible for the character to fail, and the consequences would be meaningful. If somebody's just going to open a door and go and get something to eat, this is not something that is really interesting to roll die about, so you won't bother. However, if you're in combat or if you're in a verbal clash with a diplomat of the Unicorn clan or something, then you will need to roll die and see how you do. So then it walks you through the different categories, or the different steps rather, of rolling a check. So you'll determine which skill group applies. Then you will determine which skill in that group can be used for the check. And then the player will determine their approach. So each of your 5 ring stats is kind of related to a different approach to the situation. So if you want to approach the situation with grace and cunning and precision, you'd choose an air approach. For earth, resilience, patience, and calm. Fire, passion, invention, ferocity. Water, flexibility, awareness, efficiency, and charm. Void, mysticism, intuition, and instinct. Finally, then the GM will select a target number of successes, which they call a TN, and then you roll a check, and they give an example here. So in this case, we have declaring what the check is about. The check has decided to use the fire ring and fitness skill based on the player's approach. Now, the player has fire ring of 3, so she picks up 3 ring dice and 1 die of fitness, so she picks up 1 skill die, picks up and roll the die and gets these results. And then she has an advantage called Keen Balance, which allows you to re-roll 2 dice, which she re-rolls these 2, and ends up with a good result where she has another explosive success, and she gets an opportunity where she had a blank before. So she keeps the 3 dice because she has 3 in the appropriate ring stat, and then she rolls another die because one of the re-rolled die came up with an explosive success. So she ended up with 1 opportunity, 1 strife, and 3 successes. So she was able to succeed in the check, as well as pick up an opportunity potentially used for another ability. So it's a really, really clear example of how the dice system works. I mean, once you do it a couple of times, it's super easy. You just need to pick an approach based on the ring stats that you have, use that many ring dice, use the skill that's appropriate, use that many skill dice, and then roll them and try and hit the target number. So pretty simple. It also gives a guideline for GMs here about how different target numbers should be treated in terms of the difficulty of the skill, or the task rather, that you're trying to achieve. So anything 8 or higher is like legendarily difficult, going to be really hard for most any character to achieve. TN1 is easy stuff like, carrying half of your weight or finding an item that you've misplaced somewhere. So a nice little guidance there. Plenty of guidance here on how to use the check mechanics, and then some guidance for the GM on narrating the checked results. So nice introduction to the system here. Then there's some advanced mechanics thrown in as well. So you can use assistance from others on certain checks. You can also have certain bonuses. If you, for example, have bonus successes more than you need. Sometimes you'll also need checks to resist effects being used against you, or you'll need to use competitive checks or opposed checks if you and an opponent are trying to do the same thing, basically. Then we get into using opportunity. So you can use it as a narrative tool. So, for example, if you went in with an air approach, then the opportunity might give you the ability to note something about people's strengths and weaknesses, their emotional state, or small details in objects. So depending on your approach and the narrative situation, you can gain some narrative bonuses for your character based on having some opportunities in your role. You can also use them, as I mentioned before, as kind of payment for certain abilities, which you might use for combat or magic or other things. Then it talks about strife. So, you always need to keep track of your strife, but it doesn't really come into play in a serious way until you hit your character's composure point. And then they become what's called compromised. So the way you remove strife is by, the gradual process of time passing. And it talks about what happens when you become compromised. So here we see an example. Samurai, they're showing their affection for somebody in public, which is not the kind of thing one would normally do in the strict sense of Bushido culture. So being compromised doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something horrible. It just means that you're unmasking your human emotions. And in fact, unmasking is what they call another ability that you can do. So basically, if you are compromised, the player can choose to have the character unmask, briefly expressing the true emotions beneath the guise of their perfect samurai that society demands they maintain. Keep in mind, the player may stay compromised as long as their player deems it appropriate, and can seek other ways to soothe their emotions, but these take time. The act of unmasking gives a character the chance to achieve immediate emotional clarity and openness at the cost of potentially disturbing the scene. So basically, you can choose to allow your emotions to spill forth all in one go, express what was, underneath that conflict between your ninja and your gi, and play that out in the scene. It will have various consequences. It will have risks that you may have to deal with, but it will remove your strife much more quickly than by just waiting for the passage of time. And then there's discussions about ways of unmasking. They can be, sudden retreat from battle or explosions of rage, outbursts of inappropriate speech. You can challenge somebody to a duel or something like that. All kinds of different things. And then we get into the basics of the different characters. So, the kind of meaning of different ranks in your 5 ring characteristics. And then, the nature of each of the 5 rings themselves. So what you can do with air, earth, fire, water, and of course void. And then it discusses ranks in skills as well. So basically, rank 5 in all of these seems to be basically the maximum any normal person can achieve. Most characters will max out at rank 5. To get beyond that, you'd have to be supernatural in some way, like being an Oni or a Kami, a demon, or other powerful god. However, it is possible to gain ranks of 6 or above in very particular circumstances. I think those will probably appear in supplements where, a certain rank in a skill or in one of the rings might be achieved given a certain narrative reason. So then you also have advantages and disadvantages, which are intrinsic quirks of a character's body, mind, personality, or spirit. You get several of these when you create your character, but you can get more during play as a result of narrative events or certain circumstances, in particular getting grievous critical strikes. So that's one of the things that can happen to you in combat. So along with your 5 ring scores, you also have derived attributes. So endurance is your physical stamina and will to fight. You have composure, which is the ability to take on mental and emotional strife, which we've spoken about a bit already. Focus is the speed with which a character reacts to known threats. So this is taken into account on initiative checks, for example. Vigilance represents a character's wariness and general ability to perceive threats in all spheres. So this is how hard you are to deceive or mislead. Then you have void points. So void points are a resource that characters can spend to surpass their normal limits, exert extra effort, or activate certain special abilities. A character begins the game with void points equal to half their void ring rounded up, and can accrue a maximum number of void points equal to the value of their void ring. If you manage to accrue void points up to your void ring value, you can't gain any more points. To spend a void point, you are able to seize the moment. So while making a check, you can spend 1 void point to add an additional ring die and keep 1 more die. You can do a shattering parry. So when trying to survive a critical strike, you can spend 1 void point to dramatically intercept the attack with their weapon to increase the chance of survival, potentially sacrificing the weapon in the process. You can also use certain techniques and other character abilities that require spending a void point to activate. And there are various ways you can gain void points as well, so it's something that should be kind of rising and falling throughout play. You'll use them at dramatically appropriate moments or to activate powerful abilities, and then gain them back after resolving some major character issue or dealing with anxieties that caused you a great deal of strife, for example. Then you have the social attributes, which are honor, glory, and status. Those all have different effects on your character's perception within Rokugani society. So honor is a character's personal investment in Bushido. Glory is society's view of the character's success in their role. And status is an attribute that reflects a character's social standing. And all of those, again, can fluctuate depending on your behavior. And then here we get into the struggle between Ninjo, your human desires, and Giri, which is your duty to your lord, your clan, and all that sort of stuff. And you can choose these aspects during your character creation. And these will lead to frequent conflict between what you need to do as a person, as a human being, and what you're required to do in your role within warrior society. I think this is a really interesting aspect of this system, and it's reinforced by the dice system, which brings in this element of strife, which brings you into direct conflict with your ninjo and your giri and your outwardly composed appearance as a warrior with samurai tradition. Then he talks about how you can choose your giri, how to resolve it, and then complications that can arise due to this friction between these two sides of yourself. And there's some examples here, like receiving a letter from a loved one the character is not seen in some time, realizing that a masked enemy is in fact the character's long-lost sibling. All these kind of very dramatic moments can lead to a complication for the character between these aspects of their personality. Finally, then we get into creating a character, and I believe it's been the case at least for the last several editions of L5R, that building a character is kind of a game of 20 questions. So each step of character creation, you're asking yourself a question about what your character would do. So first off, you ask, what character is your clan going to be in? And that choice will influence your basic values of your rings. So for example, if you're in the Crab clan, you get +1 to Earth. You get a skill increase of +1 to Fitness. Your status starts at 30, and then you have these lists of things about what virtues are most important to your clan in terms of the Bushido code, and what kind of things your character tends to know about. It outlines each of these benefits and bits of knowledge for all the major clans in the core book. So the dragons, the crabs, the lion clan, then we have the phoenix clan, the scorpion clan, the unicorns, and from there you choose what family your character belongs to. That's question 2. So this again will add to one or other of your rings. So if you're in the Crab clan and you're in the Hida family, you could get +1 to Earth or +1 to Fire. You get +1 skill increases to Command and Tactics, and you'd gain a glory of 44, and you get a starting wealth of 4 koku. Koku, by the way, is a historical unit that used to mean the cost of the amount of rice that one person consumes in a year. But they explain in the book somewhere that the koku has kind of decreased in value. So the actual cost of a year's worth of rice for one person is not one koku anymore. It's something like 12 koku. But anyway, so yeah, there's tons of families for each clan. And each of them will give you increases to different stats and to different skills. So you already have some interesting choices to make very early in the character creation process. You've got several families to choose from for each clan, as you can see here. We'll go into all of them in detail. Then question 3 is, what is your character's school, and what roles does that school fall into? So the school is kind of your character's path. And so it describes here the elements of a given school. There's the name, the description, the sort of the rings that you would increase by a certain amount when you select that school, the starting skills that you get at initial rank, your starting honor, and the types of techniques you can purchase when you advance after character creation, plus your starting techniques that you have at the beginning. And each school has a unique ability that is associated with it, and you gain that ability when you choose the school. You have a starting outfit, which is the clothing and equipment you have at the start, and then you have a curriculum table and a mastery ability. So as you go through higher and higher ranks of your school, you gain more techniques, and at rank 6, you get a powerful mastery ability. So we'll look at the first example here. So the Hida Defender School, which is a Bushi or warrior school. So these are the stalwart protectors of Rokugan against the horrors that mass beyond the Kaiju wall. The Hida Defender School teaches its disciples fortitude, courage, and practicality in equal measure. So if you choose this school, you gain +1 to earth and +1 to water in your rings. You get 5 choices of increased ranks to starting skills, including fitness, martial arts melee, martial arts range, martial arts unarmed, meditation, survival, and tactics. So you choose 5 of those to increase by 1. You get a starting honor of 40. You get techniques available, which include kata, which are weapon forms, certain rituals, and shuji, which are like kind of artistical, creational skills, I believe. Your starting techniques, you get a kata called Lord Hida's Grip, and you can choose either striking as earth or striking as water. Your overall ability for the school is Way of the Crab. So you ignore the cumbersome quality of armor you wear, so it makes it easier to wear heavy armor. And once per round, before making a check to resist a critical strike, you may reduce the severity of that critical strike by the resistance of your armor plus your school rank to a minimum of 0. So you're tougher. Basically, you can wear heavier armor with no movement penalties, and you're better able to resist the effects of critical strikes. You start out with lacquered armor, traveling clothes, daisho, katana, and wakizashi pair. These are kind of the 2 classical swords we imagine for most samurai. Or you can get a tetsubo or otsuchi, which are war club or hammer, respectively. You get a club, knife, and traveling pack. And then we have this extensive list of advancements. So as you gain XP, you can spend them to rank up through these different advancements in your skills of that particular school. So for rank 1, you can gain martial skills, like command, medicine, survival. You can gain another rank 1 kata. You can gain the rushing avalanche style. In rank 2, you can gain some additional kata, some additional shuji skills, and so on and so forth, until you finally get to rank 6, which is mastery. So you gain a special ability where at the beginning of a turn, you can spend 1 void point. If you do, ignore all of your conditions, terrain, and negative persistent effects of techniques and abilities. Do not apply your disadvantages to checks. If you would die, you cling to life for a few moments longer instead, but die when the effect ends. This effect persists until the end of your next turn. So for that turn, you can spend a void point and avoid anything negative affecting your character at all, and it'll keep you alive for that turn if you were just about to die as well. So really, this school is all about staying stalwart in the face of dire threats. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these. That was just one example, but you can see there's a huge variety. I think there's 30 or 31 different schools just in the core rulebook alone. All of them have a full write-up like this. So, for example, we have the Hiruma Scout School, which is Bushi and Shinobi. Shinobi is a ninja, by the way. We have the Kaiju Engineer School, who is an artisan and a Bushi. They all have their own advancement tracks here, their own special abilities, their own additions to your honor and starting skills. We have the Kuni Purifier skill, which is a combo of Shugenja, a wizard, and a Bushi, which is a warrior. A pretty nice image down there at the bottom. We've got the Yasuki Merchant School, which is a courtier, so they're bigger on social skills. We have the Asahina Artificer School, Shugenja, and Artisan combination. Again, lovely illustrations throughout this book. We have the Daidoji Iron Warrior School, which is a pure warrior path. We have the Doji Diplomat School, which is a courtier, so again, more into social stuff. Then we have the Duelist School, so they'll be great in one-on-one combat. Then we have the Agasha Mystic School, so you can see a fiery Shugenja spell being cast there on the bottom. We've got the Kitsuki Investigator School, courtier and Bushi combo. We have the Minamoto Two Heavens Adept School, which is a warrior path. We have the Togashi Tattooed Order, which is a monk. So they get access to Kiho, which are the monk kind of magic skills used by focusing your chi. You have the Akodo Commander School, which is Bushi. You have the Ikoma Bard School, a courtier. So presumably they'll be having some musical skills involved. We have the Kitsu Medium School of Shugenja. So it seems they can perform mystic rites and have a connection to their forebears. So perhaps you can summon, you can unearth your ancestry and commune with spirits. We have the Matsu Berserker skill, and certainly that person is definitely going berserk, I think, down there at the bottom. We have the Asako Lore Master School, which is a courtier school. There you go, kind of a wizened sage, it seems like. The Isawa Elementalist School, which is another type of Shugenja. So this is a Phoenix Clan version of that. Then we have the Shiba Guardian School, a combo of Bushi and Courtier. Interesting combination there. You can see an example down below. We have the Kaito Shrine Keeper School, another variety of monk, seen here armed with a bow. Then we have the Bayushi Manipulator School, which is a school of courtier, so presumably they will be good at deception, spreading rumors, and undermining nobility and other people in court. Then we have the Shosuro Infiltrator School. They're a shinobi and courtier, so they have ninjutsu techniques available. You can see the nice, cool ninja-type outfit down here at the bottom. We have the Soshi Illusionist School, which is a Shugenja, courtier, and shinobi combined. Quite an interesting combo there. And a very dramatic-looking image there, seeming to summon a spirit of some sort. We have the Yogo Wardmaster School, another variety of Shugenja, seen there in conflict with something. Then we have the Ide Trader School, a courtier. This is a school after my own heart because he's playing a game of Go, which is a wonderful game, which I've devoted a great deal of time to myself over the years. Then we have the Moto Conqueror School, a Bushi path. Shinjo Outrider School, Bushi and Courtier. The Utaku Battle Maiden, Bushi. You can see her down there, looking suitably hard-assed with a fully armored warhorse. We've got the Worldly Ronin path, who's a Bushi and a courtier as well. And there you go. So there's an awful lot of schools you can choose from, all with their own paths of advancement, which is pretty amazing, all with their own special abilities. So with that, plus your family background and your clan background, you already have a lot of specialization available to you. As you go further in character creation, you choose how your character stands out. So are they creative? Then they get +1 fire. Are they graceful and eloquent? +1 air. Are they adaptable, friendly, or aware? Get +1 water. Are they thorough, patient, calm? Get +1 earth. Self-awareness, insight, or mystical? Get +1 void. So even more ways to differentiate yourself. So who is your character's lord and what is your character's duty to them? So that will vary according to what your role is, what their clan is, who their primary loyalties lie to. Then what does your character long for, and how does this impede their duty? So here we're talking about ninjo. So the previous question was about giri, and this is more about ninjo, which is your human desires that can come into conflict with your obligations. Then you ask, what are your character's relationship with their clan? So not every samurai is kind of in full agreement with the way their clan behaves or how they fit into the Rokugan world or political sphere. What does your character think of Bushido? So if you, for example, are a very staunch believer in Bushido, you'll gain more honor. If you diverge from some beliefs, then you can gain a rank in some other skill that is not normally encouraged by the Bushido lifestyle, but it gives you a benefit to being a little bit different in that respect. And all the choices in the game so far seem interesting in that way. Like there's nothing that's just a net negative, it gives you a balance. If you want to be more orthodox in your interpretation of the Bushido lifestyle, that'll gain you certain things. If you don't want to be, that'll gain you other things. And it informs very clearly how you should roleplay that character. Then what is your character's greatest achievements? What holds their character back the most in life? So this is about setting your distinctions, advantages, and disadvantages. What activity makes your character feel most at peace? So these are passions that you have that can help you to resolve your strife, perhaps. What concern, fear, or foible troubles your character the most? So there's some specific anxieties that they recommend, but you can also create these kind of fears and foibles for yourself. Who has your character learned the most from in their life? That could be a teacher, could be a mentor of some type, or a family member. In the relationship perception of the character sheet, you'll record the name of the person from whom your character has learned the most, and then choose one of the listed features. One advantage related to your character's mentor and their relationship, and one disadvantage related to the character's mentor and their relationship, and one rank in a skill that your character developed as a result. So again, every choice that we're making here with these 20 questions is fleshing out that character more and more and giving them a really defined place in the Rokugani world, which I think is really excellent. So what's the first thing people notice when they encounter your character? How does your character react to stressful situations? So these are things that feed into the personality, habits, and quirks section of your character sheet. And then this helps you inform your use of strife and unmasking during your role-playing. What are your character's pre-existing relationships with other clans, families, organizations, and traditions? And then how would your character's parents describe them? So this is something that you can, again, flesh out the relationships part of your character sheet, and you can gain rank of one skill in which your character has no ranks, and determine whether your character's parents approve of this extracurricular interest or see it as a regrettable deviation, and why. Then who is your character named to honor? So names don't come from nowhere in the Rokugan world. They are often honoring somebody specific from your family line or from your clan. What is your character's personal name? And then finally, an interesting question for anybody to think about, how should your character die? So it says, all proper samurai fully expect to die in the service of their lord, and it is said that every samurai lives at all times 3 feet from death, the length of a katana blade. However, some deaths have more meaning than others, and there are plenty of samurai whose outward facade of courage hides a deep-seated fear of mortality. How would your character like to end? Will they fulfill their destiny and join their ancestors in Yomi, the realm of sacred ancestors, or will their soul be forced to undertake another cycle on the celestial wheel of reincarnation? This has no mechanical implications, but you should keep it in mind, and your GM certainly will. So with those 20 questions, you then have the basis of your character. And then we get into mechanics of using XP to advance your character, how you advance your school ranks, and the costs of each of those types of advancements. So ring value +1, skill +1, or gaining a technique. XP numbers are low, so 3 XP times the value of the ring purchased, for example, for a ring increase. So XP are given out on a fairly sparing basis compared to something like D&D, where you're talking about thousands of XP when you're killing monsters and stuff. You can also spend XP out of curriculum, so these are on skills that are not normally within your purview. You can also unlock mastery abilities as you get to that point. Then we get into your distinctions, passions, adversities, and anxieties, which were talked about in the 20 questions section, and sort of the mechanical aspects of those, using those in play. Then we have examples of advantages and disadvantages. Quite a few examples here to work from, which is very handy. So it gives you kind of a type of distinction and the effects that has on your character. And there's nothing wrong, of course, with using any of these. You don't have to feel like, oh, I should build something specific for myself. These are really well thought out examples of each type of distinction. They work really well in play, and there's tons of them. I mean, there's a huge amount of choices here to make an interesting character. As you can see, there's page after page of these. Then there's specific disadvantages, and again, we've got page after page of these. Things like cognitive lapses, deafness, discomfiting countenance. So you've got beaten with the ugly stick, basically. You've got a curse of some kind. I mean, all kinds of interesting stuff. You could have a lost hand or foot, or lost arm or hand, rather. You could have lost an eye, lost fingers, lost memories, all kinds of interesting stuff. Again, we've got loads and loads of options for these. Then we have specific anxieties you can choose from. So you can have addictions, you can have battle traumas, you can have cynicism about certain things. You can have dark secrets, delusions of grandeur, ferocity, impatience, intolerance, jealousy, all kinds of things that again, would really give you some interesting roleplay material when you're playing your character. You can have phobias, and then you can also create custom advantages and disadvantages, of course, and it gives you some guidance about how to do that for each of these different types of things. Now we have a rather huge section on the different skills and how they apply in play. We're really just going to skim through this because this is going to be a lot of pages that really, you're better off buying the book and just kind of going through these, because there are a heck of a lot of skills. They're grouped together by sort of main game functions. So you have, social skills. Here's the scholar skill group, for example. Give you sample tasks and target numbers for them, sample uses of each of them. Different approaches depending on your ring that you're using for it. Lots of examples to get you going in play. So it feels like they've given you an awful lot of great material. There's a lot to do when you create a character, and there's a lot of lore behind this game. But certainly they don't leave you just hanging. They give you lots of clear direction about how each aspect of the game should work. Then we get into techniques. So these are aspects like Kiho, the Shugenja invocations, magical spells. So it explains each of the types. We have kata, which are specialized combat techniques, physical combat. Kiho are philosophical and spiritual techniques for aligning one's inner energy, ki, to that of the wider cosmos. These are for monks, basically. We have invocations, which are prayers and offerings to powerful spirits, and they're practiced mostly by Shugenja. We have rituals, which are ceremonies performed by spiritualists. They tend to be lengthy and have esoteric effects. Shuji are verbal and social techniques, allowing those who employ them to communicate clearly, avoid social traps, motivate allies, and manipulate their rivals. Maho are evil sorceress techniques, dark pacts made with wicked spirits in exchange for power. And then ninjutsu are the secretive techniques of shinobi, ninjas, taught clandestinely in various traditions. Ninjutsu are new actions or grant new ways to spend opportunity. And you'll find that with a lot of the techniques. First of all, to get it, there will be some prerequisites that you need to fulfill. There will be an XP cost associated, and there will be a way to activate it. So we'll pick an example here. So Crescent Moon Style is a kata, so it's a physical skill. It's described as striking first is valuable, but so is surviving. To defend without sacrificing offense, a bushi must be ready to retaliate swiftly after blocking or evading. With a quick shift, the bushi switches from defense to bring down their full force upon their enemy. When you perform a guard activation, so this is how to activate it, when you perform a guard action, you may spend opportunity in the following way. After a character at range 1 to 2 performs an attack targeting you or another character you are guarding, you may perform a strike action with one readied martial arts, melee, or unarmed weapon targeting that character. So basically, if somebody comes after you or somebody that you're protecting and you get an opportunity, you can perform a strike right away with any weapon that you have ready, and that effect continues until the start of your next turn, or until you use the ability to make a strike. So in many cases, opportunity is going to be a way that you set off this action, and then there'll be some kind of situational aspect where you'll be able to spend that opportunity in that situation and activate the ability. So you can see there's a whole bunch of kata available here. Then we have, and they all, of course, go up to different ranks. We have ones for ranged and close combat. Then we get into kiho, which are your monk skills. So, for example, we have Air Fist. The monk swirls their hands in an intricate pattern, channeling their ki into the air and turning even a placid breeze into a funnel of roaring wind. A gale follows the monk's strikes, hurling foes back and slamming them against intervening objects. So to activate it as an attack and support action, you may make a target number 1 martial arts unarmed air check to empower your unarmed blows. You can choose one other character at range 0 to 1 as the target for the burst effect. So if you want to use it as an enhancement, if you succeed, this Kiho activates. While the Kiho is active, treat the maximum range of your punch and kick unarmed weapon profiles as equal to your air ring. So basically, you're harnessing the air ring to give additional range, potentially a huge increase in range to your unarmed attacks. Or you can use it in a single burst. If you have 2 or more additional successes, bonus successes, you will deal physical damage to the target equal to your air ring. Your target must then make a TN4 fitness check or be pushed 1 range band away from you, plus a number of range bands equal to their shortfall. So that's how many successes they had below the target number of 4. So that's quite a powerful ability. You get long range unarmed strikes, or you can use it as a single burst, and basically your opponent has to roll a pretty tough check. And if they fail, then they'll get pushed back a bunch away from you. So you could use that to clear enemies out from around you and your comrades. So there's loads of really cool Kiho in here. I suspect the supplements will have many additional ones, depending on what additional themes are covered in those supplements. Then we have invocations. So these are the category for Shugenja. So they're channeling power or making making offerings to spirits to gain earthly power. So it walks you through how to use an invocation, and then since you're wielding forces beyond mortal ken, even the most practiced Shugenja risk unintended consequences when appealing to the kami. Further, if the Shugenja's soul is in turmoil, the power of the kami they call forth will be similarly disordered. So if you get 3 or more strife on kept dice while you're performing an invocation, you get a spiritual backlash, which means you suffer 3 fatigue from the raw power, and you suffer an additional effect based on the element that you're using. Then it walks through how you can spend your opportunities for invocations. So a nice handy table here. Depending on what kind of invocation element you're using, there are ways that you can spend your additional opportunity to enhance the effect of your invocation. Then we have invocations written up and split up by the different elements. So again, we'll pick one sort of at random. Let's say Earth this time. Bind the Shadow. So this is a rank 2 invocation. While confronting a tainted being, that's a being that's infected by the Shadowlands, the Shugenja can call forth the pure spirit of a small sanctified object to weaken or even paralyze the monster. To activate it as an attack action, you make a target number 3 Theology Earth check, targeting one otherworldly being at range 0 to 2. If you succeed, crackling arcs of jade light smite and purify your target. It must resist with a target number 4 Fitness, Air 2, Water 5 check, or suffer the immobilized and silence conditions. This effect persists for a number of rounds equal to your Earth Ring. It also offers some new opportunity uses. So if you spend 1, you can get each target that fails a fitness check is bound until the end of the scene, instead of just the number of rounds equal to your Earth Ring. 2 opportunities. Each target that fails is bound for 1 year. If you have 2 or more, you can increase the target number of checks to resist the effect by 1 per 2 opportunities spent this way. And if you spend 4, each target that fails a fitness check is bound for 100 years. So that gives you an idea of the level of power of some of these invocations. And that's why, they are quite hard to use. and they do have the potential cost of spiritual backlash as well. But yeah, if you're facing a being tainted by the Shadowlands, potentially if you get a really good roll, you could bind them in place for 100 years. So not bad. So again, we've got a whole load of these for each of the different elements. Loads of cool stuff to learn as a Shugenja. Then we get into rituals. So these are rites that take, they're kind of spiritualist rites that take a longer period of time. And then you have, some of them are quite specialized here. So like a divination rite, you look into a character's future. So this is only available during downtime, and you make a theology void check targeting one character, and you look into their future. And if you succeed, then there are various different ways that you can look into the different possible omens. And there's also some new way to spend opportunity, where if you fail the check but you have an opportunity, an additional omen appears to you after the first. Choose one of the above omens in addition to the one the GM chose. There's other ceremonies like the tea ceremony. You can build some kind of threshold barriers. Then we have shuji, which are social techniques. So if you're a courtier, you're going to be using stuff like this. So you'll be able to communicate wordlessly using things like cadence. You can create the impression of weakness to disguise strength, or strength to conceal weakness. So these are all interesting ways to use social skills to deceive the opponent, to expose their weaknesses, or to conceal your own. So it's kind of social combat, if you like, is a big part of this game. As it is in Star Wars as well, which again uses a quite different dice system. But the narrative aspects of these game systems, I think, both really support the use of social skills as actually very powerful techniques to succeed in scenes, even when there's combat going on of the more traditional variety. So let's see, we can talk about the Void Shuji. We've got Lord Bayushi's Whispers, rank 2. The Kami Bayushi, self-appointed villain of the Emperor, Hante, and Master of Duplicity, founded the Scorpion clan with a simple purpose: to dishonor themselves so that others could live honorably. So once per game session, during a narrative scene or as a downtime activity, you may make a TN2 skullduggery check to uncover an informant who can give you information about a subject. If you succeed, you reveal one informant who can give you information about a topic of your choice. If the informant's profile is required, use an appropriate NPC of the GM's choice. So this is a really big narrative impact, right? If you succeed in this Shuji, basically you're able to create an informant who can give you inside info about any topic that you like, which presumably will be learning about, plans within plans of other factions and clans within the Rokugani Empire. There's also a new opportunity. So if you succeed, you can choose one skill, and the informant will have a number of ranks in that skill equal to your school rank, and can perform checks with that skill to assist you until the end of the scene. So that further fleshes out your informant and gives them additional impact and power. Then we have Maho. Maho are the dark magics, which are basically summoning demons and sacrificing things. They can be quite powerful, but also very dangerous. There's only a few outlined here, so I imagine there'll be more in the Shadowland supplement, which unfortunately is very hard to find at the moment, at least in physical form. So as an example, we can look at the rank 1 Mark of Desecration. So you perform the rite on a corpse or groups of corpses, placing ominous masks over their faces and whispering dark words into their dead ears. The dead are dragged to their feet by the Kansen possessing them, moving with the jerking, unnatural gait of an ill-made puppet. So, as a support action, you may make a TN2 theology check targeting a number of corpses up to your earth ring. If you succeed, you summon a zombie peasant from each target. You also curse an area encompassing one range band around each target position, which gains the defiled terrain quality. So that really shows how using the Shadowlands really has a permanent negative impact on the world around you, so not to be trifled with. And again, you get some new opportunity usages where if you spend some additional opportunities, you can increase the number of corpses that you animate. You can increase their endurance. They can use your skill ranks instead of their own, and you can rise cause a special Bushi skeleton to rise up. So that's pretty powerful. Then on black, dark-colored pages, appropriately enough, we have some ninjutsu skills. So these are specific to shinobi, and these are secret techniques that are written only in the minds of their practitioners. So you can do things like skulk, which allows you to conceal yourself from sight. Use deadly sting, which is it's not an honorable action, but it's tremendously effective to use poison, which is what this does. Noxious cloud, you can build volatile concoction, so you can escape via creating choking smoke or even poison unprepared foes to weaken them. You can do silencing strikes, which allows you to eliminate targets without raising alarm. So these are people who are very, very skilled at infiltration. Finally, we get into equipment. I won't talk too much about this, but basically there's a ton of different weapons you can use in the game. You can see a lot of them are unusual weapons that you may not have heard of. They're all derived from traditional Oriental weapons, in particular Japanese weapons like the katana, nodachi, which is like the Japanese version of a great sword, all this kind of stuff, but also weapons from Chinese and Korean traditions. It explains the attributes of each of them, compiles them all in a handy table for the melee weapons, and they fall into different categories like swords, axes, we have blunt weapons like clubs and hammers, other hand weapons like knives, we have different types of polearms, we have arrows and bows, and then some specialist weapons like shuriken, if you favor the shinobi ninja lifestyle. Then there's different types of armor you can wear, which all have different abilities to resist physical damage and some additional qualities as well. But the better the armor, the rarer and more expensive it's going to be to obtain. Then you have definitions of all the different qualities that items can have. So for example, if you have a katana, it's going to be razor edged. So you'll look at what that means here in this section. You can have other personal effects, of course, as well. These can be things like games, playing Go and Shogi and so forth. Chopsticks, calligraphy sets, things that would be appropriate for your character to carry around with them as a matter of habit. You can carry around even poisons, extra quivers of arrows, tea sets, all kinds of stuff. And then we get into the structure of gameplay, so the use of scenes, the use of downtime, how to work through conflict scenes, and there's a detailed breakdown of how combat works, including initiative. And interestingly, you can take 5 different stances, which are based on the 5 rings, of course, and they have a strong impact on your attack posture in the scene. So well worth familiarizing yourself with the 5 different stances. Then we have tons of examples of how this all works. Then intrigues. So these are social engagements, and they follow the same sort of pattern as a combat scene, but they're basically socially oriented. Again, lots of information about those, how people can assist you, different things you can do, like spreading rumors, the different stances you can adopt. And then we have the duel. So there are different ways to engage in a duel. Perhaps you've been forced to sort of preserve your honor or to reduce the honor of somebody else. And there are different types of tools outlined. So duels where you incapacitate, one where you aim to defeat. And you can have the Yaijutsu duel, which is to first strike or first blood. All have different kind of mechanics and different ways to resolve them. They're very cool, very atmospheric, and definitely bring in that feeling of samurai drama. Then there are special rules for skirmishes, which are battles between groups of combatants. And again, in the one of the supplements, there are additional rules about large-scale combat. So you can do combats all the way up to like clashing armies as well. And one thing is that, like the Star Wars system, you have silhouette size, like the silhouette value that characters have or that creatures have. It gives you an indication of their relative size. So small objects are silhouette 0. Silhouette 1 is children and like dogs. Normal adult humans are silhouette 2. Silhouette 3 is bigger creatures like nagas and horses and trolls. Silhouette 4 is things like ogres and elephants. And Silhouette 5 is dragons, which are, of course, very rare. And the game also operates with range bands rather than like breaking things down into specific ranges in terms of increments of feet or squares like you would in D&D. However, it does give you a system to use a grid if you want to, but I'd be very surprised if many people use that. I think it's more traditional to deal with combat in L5R with either simple drawings on a battle map or just with theater of the mind, basically. Then there's information about how harm and healing works. The game is perhaps less deadly than 4th edition. I know my experience with 4th edition was that it was not uncommon for even a skilled samurai to suddenly die from, being stabbed with a rusty pocket knife from a peasant or something. That's less likely to happen in this game, but you can still die surprisingly quickly. And taking damage will cause critical strikes that can have severe consequences, and some of them permanent. So here's a table of critical strikes by severity. So they go from a close call, so it slices your hair or clothes but doesn't draw blood. Then you've got flesh wounds, debilitating gashes. Then permanent injury is just a little ways into the table. Then you can get maimed. You can have an agonizing death where you're slowly dying. You can have a swift death where you're dying quickly. And you can have immediate death. So critical strikes are a pretty bad deal. You can also be afflicted by different conditions. You can get the bleeding condition. You can be on fire. You can be compromised, of course. You can be dazed, disoriented, dying in X number of rounds. You can be enraged, exhausted, immobilized, incapacitated, intoxicated, prone, silenced, unconscious, wounded. A lot of different ways you could be suffering in this game. And here we have some rules for mass battles. Again, I think if you really want to focus on that, then the supplement on that, which also includes lots of rules for the Lion Clan, apparently, would be a good investment. Finally, there is a relatively thin game mastery section here, which is kind of surprising. I would think that with a system that is this kind of unique focus, you probably want a little bit more GM guidance, but at least it seems pretty kind of getting to the core of things. It talks about setting goals for the characters, enacting different types of hurdles, how to create scenarios, how to shift elements of the game to make it more or less gritty, for example. Different kinds of obstacles you can set up for your characters. The information you need to know about how the Imperial structure is set up. But yeah, it seems like the kind of game where you wouldn't necessarily scoff at the opportunity to have a Game Master's Guide. I know there is a big, thick book called The Emerald Empire, which is all the really dense background about Rokugani lore. That is very much in the post for me. I don't think it's going to ship until next week, I believe, but it is coming soon. So I will bring that to you with some more of a closer look once it arrives. Finally, helpfully for the DM, there are some NPC templates. So some tips on gauging how difficult you should make an encounter. And then you have templates for basic character types like artists, investigators, sages, warriors, tricksters, and then some sample fully fleshed out NPCs like a loyal Bushi warrior, a humble peasant, a seasoned courtier. These can work really well in a pinch when you just need to make a kind of important NPC with full stats, but you don't want to go through the whole process of creating them. Excuse me. And I think in later supplements as well, there will be a lot more of these, particularly in the Shadowlands supplement. There are loads of evil bad guys that get full featured write-ups like this. So you even have like Shugenja, Ashigaru, who are kind of foot soldiers. You have daimyo, who are really powerful, kind of governor type people, desperate highwaymen, bandits, experienced bandits, skillful ronin, which are masterless samurai, evil cultists like the blood speakers. They get a write up here. Wicked maho tsukai, so these are black magicians basically. And then a few Shadowlands horrors like the Bushi skeleton, which we talked about earlier. That was one thing that you could potentially raise if you were using Maho to raise an army of zombies. And the Bog Hag, which is a terrifying mythical creature that basically can wear the skin of something else. And they basically eventually start to, that flesh starts to melt away, revealing a horrific creature underneath. You also have Shadowlands goblins, sinister oni. Oni are big demons They take a million different forms, and they are extremely strong, so you really don't want to mess with these guys. There are also zombie peasants, forest trolls. I mean, loads of cool stuff, even though it's a relatively short section. Kirin, which is kind of the Japanese or Eastern equivalent of a unicorn, basically. Manifest air kami, so the gods of the air, gods of the earth, fire, water. And then we have some just regular animals like bears, boars, cats, dogs, hawks, horses, hunting cats. And then we've got nice comprehensive tables from here on out. So sort of comprehensive examples of uses of opportunity. So general examples, conflict and martial skill examples, initiative check examples, other skill examples, downtime check examples, and then a handy glossary. If you forget what a weird Japanese term means, you can look it up back here. And then a nice sort of bibliography of places to look for inspiration, sort of primary sources, scholarly works, and works of fiction, and even including animation, film, and manga. So that is the core rulebook for L5R. You can see there's a ton of great stuff in there. It's shorter than the core rulebook in 4th edition. I think it's about 70 pages shorter overall, but as you can see, it's absolutely gorgeous. There are a ton of character options right out the gate. I think certainly if you want to use the setting to the full, you're going to want to buy some of the supplements as well, but that's the case with almost any RPG nowadays. They rarely give you everything in one single book, because then what are they going to sell you later, right? And I don't think that what you get here in the core rulebook is in any way disappointing. Because I've talked forever about this book, I'm going to cut it here for now, and I will come back and we'll look briefly at the Courts of the Stone supplement and the GM's kit. So until then, I hope you are keeping well. I hope the video was useful if you're thinking about getting into L5R 5th edition. As usual, if you've got questions, hit me up in the comments, and look forward to seeing you in part 2 of this video. All right, take care, and bye-bye.